Hi, we're Doug and Mary, a retired couple from Montana, traveling through Alaska and Canada and camping in our converted Toyota Sienna van. If you just started following us, we are now in Atlantic Canada and last time dodged a nasty storm by staying at a B&B in Gaspé, Quebec.
After yesterday's storm passed, it was a beautiful morning in Gaspé as we rounded the tip of the peninsula and started heading south. We were as far north as we would go on this stretch of our journey, about the same latitude as our adventures around Nipigon. We did see a few seals at Seal Cove, but of course they didn't pose for the camera.
We came down the hill into the town of Perce for a magnificent view of the famous Perce Rock. During low tide, it used to be possible to walk out to the rock. However, now it is closed due to frequent rockfall and nesting shorebirds. It is a major tourist attraction, and there are thousands of visitors, and parking is extremely difficult, but we did manage to catch a few good views of the rock.
Turn left on Relacroix.
Thanks to iOverlander for another great camp spot, this time at a small fishing wharf near the town of Point Verte.
You've arrived.
Here's a gorgeous piece of beach in New Brunswick. Looking out, way out there towards Prince Edward Island. Our beautiful piece of lonely beach had the most spectacular sunset.
In the morning, the tide had receded quite a distance, leaving a very shallow sandy bottom. It didn't take the Great Blue Heron long to discover that there were fish trapped in those pools. And then there were more and more herons, and more and more. We watched for hours and eventually counted 25 great blue herons feasting on one fish after another stranded in the shallow pools.
Like this guy on the rock. He says, why should I get my feet wet? Maybe the fishing's better over there. Oh, coming back. Four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Back I flew over here now. 24, 25, and then a bunch farther out there.
Yeah, there's a bunch farther out, but we can't. You can just barely see it.
Eventually, we left to discover more adventures down the road. Continuing east, we found our way to the longest bridge we'd ever been on. The 8-mile-long Confederation Bridge connects Prince Edward Island to the rest of mainland Canada. It took 3.5 years to construct and cost $1.3 billion, opening in 1997. It runs 130 feet above the waterline and is free to enter Prince Edward Island. If you ever want to leave the island, it costs $50. It took us 11 minutes and 56 seconds to cross with very little traffic.
We decided to take a few days and do a figure 8 around the island. That way we could see both the coast as well as the interior. Much of the countryside looks just like this, with rolling hills, tidy farms, green fields, multicolored houses, views of bays and blue oceans.
After reaching the north coast, we decided to stay at a traditional campground, but the scenery was worth it. This is the north shore of Prince Edward Island, looking pretty much north. It's a beautiful fall day.
Turn right, then you will arrive at your destination.
And when a friend said, "Of course you're going to see Anne of Green Gables," we didn't know much about the popular books written by Lucy Maud Montgomery in 1908. But the next morning we stopped at Green Gables National Heritage Place and spent a few hours at the location, at the setting for the stories, touring the buildings and hiking the trails.
By the end of the day, we had downloaded the entire series from Netflix to watch in the evenings, now that the nights are longer. We were also told that no visit to Charlottetown would be complete without a visit to the Churchill Arms, one of the most British pubs in Canada. So we had a pint of local beer and sampled the food before checking out some of the downtown shops.
We thought that the town was both charming and beautiful.
The very latest on monster Hurricane Fiona, the massive Category 4 storm moving across the Atlantic, now bearing down on Bermuda.
Here's how it's going to pass. By Friday into Saturday, it gets close to Nova Scotia.
The weather changed abruptly since yesterday, and there was a storm coming, and an even bigger one after that. News reports were urging local residents to prepare for the worst. There aren't a lot of boondocking spots on Prince Edward Island, but we did find one in the direction that we were exploring called Black Brook Lookout Point. It was beautiful and extremely windy, but at least there were no mosquitoes. There's a big storm headed our way, and it's windy. Hasn't rained right here yet, although we just drove through some. Kind of dusty on the road. Kind of at the end of this point. It's in the mid 50s right now. A little chilly, but boy, are there some rough 40 miles an hour. That's gorgeous.
news reports were now sounding more ominous about Hurricane Fiona, and if those winds would be 2 or 3 times as strong as these, we probably shouldn't be camping in a car. We still had another day or more, but we made plans to escape the island and head inland tomorrow.
To get ready for Hurricane Fiona, the storm is tracking towards Atlantic Canada and could hit the region later this week.
Fiona will impact PEI. We know that. We don't know the how and the where and the how bad, but we can say for certain we're going to see impacts.
Well, it poured all night long, and there's a hurricane in our way. So we're going to book out of here. We're going to try to get back to New Brunswick before things get hairy, and then get out of what they think is the path of the storms and the storm surge and so on. Have to cut Prince Edward Island a little short. We saw a lot of it. Lots of coastline, lots of waves, and the farms and villages and so on in between. So it was a wonderful spot. I really like it. It's very rural. It's friendly. I'd like to come back again sometime.
The morning weather was still fine for a bit more exploring, so we found a cute little park themed for nursery rhymes to spend some time and make breakfast.
We loved all of the immaculately trimmed yards and well-kept homes in the small villages. It really shows that people have pride of ownership and of their town.
Eventually, we needed to get back across the long bridge. In the end, we did make a figure 8 around the island, just not the one we wanted, and we didn't stay as long. If a massive hurricane was going to hit the island, they don't need us getting in the way.
I was going to say I hear bagpipes.
2 south for 7 miles.
Our new plans allowed us to take in the northwest end of Nova Scotia and the Bay of Fundy. So off we went to find a spot for the night.
Your destination is on the right.
I Overlander again showed a great spot in an abandoned gravel quarry.
The Funday Discovery Site is supposed to be one of the best places to watch a boar tide come through. Like all tides, some are much higher than others, but the one today wasn't supposed to be very high. Still, it was one of those must-see things, so we arrived early and saw some dolphins in the bay, an almost unheard of thing. Today the boar tide was slow and low as the water moved backwards up the Salmon River outlet.
This is a look at the storm track this morning. Right now, Environment Canada says Hurricane Fiona is moving towards Nova Scotia, with Atlantic Canada and eastern Quebec forecast to start getting the storm's rain and wind early Saturday.
Warnings about the hurricane were becoming more dire, so we decided to ride out Hurricane Fiona farther inland and managed to get a B&B for a couple of nights in Fredericton, New Brunswick, about 200 miles east. Time to turn the van around, but we still had the rest of today and one more night to enjoy Nova Scotia, so we headed to Tatamagouche, not just a town with a fun name to pronounce, but a town that has a microbrewery with a great reputation.
Small-town microbreweries offer a slice of life of the town. Usually the locals are gathering, relaxed and eager to talk about their life in the town and why they love it. Most are family-friendly, and quite often even the local dogs are wandering in and out.
100 kilometers an hour before morning, and we're expecting the rain and the wind to continue. According to Environment and Climate Change Canada, winds out of the north tomorrow night, 40 gusting to 60 kilometers an hour, becoming northeast 60 gusting to 80 by midnight, and then northerly 70 gusting to 100 kilometers an hour before morning, and we're expecting
low tide, slight breeze out here. Waves aren't very high, but there's a hurricane coming. So we're going to spend the night around here and then hightail it up back to New Brunswick and spend the night, eat a bread and breakfast, 2 nights actually, and then hopefully we'll be able to come on back after things are calmed down. Beautiful spot here though.
Less than an hour down the road was the very old and scenic city of Amherst, on the western edge of Nova Scotia. We walked the downtown area a bit and of course stopped at Tim Hortons for breakfast.
After checking in at our Fredericton B&B, we took the Riverwalk, saw an interesting old cemetery, the downtown area, and discovered a great friendly restaurant where we enjoyed a delicious supper and chatted with the owner for a while.
Later that night, Hurricane Fiona hit Atlantic Canada brutally hard, parking itself over Prince Edward Island for 12 hours. It was the strongest storm in Canadian history, generating ocean waves of 98 feet southeast of PEI and winds of 110 miles per hour in Nova Scotia. The boardwalks and beaches at PEI National Park, where we stayed a few days earlier, were decimated, and 80% of the trees were toppled. Most areas had major damage, and power was out in many places for weeks. We definitely made the right decision by retreating west.
Fiona landed early Saturday as a post-tropical storm, but with hurricane-force winds, and it hit with more intensity than any storm on record, leaving scene after scene of gut-wrenching damage.
It was the storm of a lifetime, though, one that smashed weather records. Fiona came barreling in.
Fiona's punishing force also reached into Quebec. Check out what it did there. The historic Chateau du Bouc on the Gaspé Peninsula was swept into the sea. The building had stood for 106 years.
That's where we'll leave it for today. Join us next time when we find out that the southern end of Nova Scotia can still be explored. We just need to figure out how to get there.
Thanks for watching.